And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli, that's Danny Cannell, that's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson here for a Pun Further review. Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. You can always jump in on the recording of this very show. Thanks to all of you that are with us at youtube.com/cover3. And if you missed it, hey, try to arrange that schedule so that you can maybe pull up that second screen. Maybe we'll come up with a boss button like they do for the NCAA tournament so that you can check it out at work. We've got a lot to get to today. The very significant injury news coming out of multiple places, including Clemson, which will have our spotlight when we look at some of the AP poll changes, AP poll versus coaches poll for Penn State and Oklahoma, and of course our Upon Further review. But I wanted to start with just a quick word and look at a coaching change that did not quite require a lighting of the sirens. But I do think that as we try to have a good angle on all these coaching changes, and I think that we do a good job of covering them, I felt like we should mention it first because Georgia Southern has decided that after a 1-3 start, Chad Lunsford is out. So as we look at it, I think the two questions that are interesting first is, number one, what do you think about this job? This is a very proud program because of its national championships at the FCS level. Its list of alumni, not alumni, but its former coaches is somewhat star-studded. It's done a good job, at least in the past, and especially in the FCS era, of being able to move coaches on, both assistants and also head coaches, to other Power 5 and FBS opportunities. So what kind of job do you think this is? What are your expectations for it? What are reasonable expectations for Georgia Southern? And then, of course, and we don't need to go too long on this, if you've got any thoughts, suggestions, or otherwise, remember, Cover 3 podcast will be your search firm. We will undercut Parker and whoever else you're out there. We will charge less than those other search firms. It's something that we feel very qualified in doing just based on being podcast hosts. So for Georgia Southern being open, what do we make of the news and what do we make of the job?
I mean, I think that it's a good group of 5 job. I think that clearly they do care about football and they take it seriously and they want to win, or else they wouldn't be making the decision, 4 games into the season to make the change. And they've showed, like Lunsford got the job when they fired Tyson Summers because things were going terribly there. They weren't running the option. They brought in Lunsford. He brought the option back and things started off well, but they've been trending the wrong direction the last few years. So they're just they're not going to waste time. They're like, okay, this clearly isn't working. We want to make the move. And they're getting it. And I think that, I don't know who the coach is going to be, but considering how important running the option is, I feel like there are very few logical candidates. And the one that I think's made the most sense from the people that I've heard so far is Brian Bohannon from Kennesaw State, who was an assistant at Georgia Southern back in the late 90s, early 2000s under, was he on Paul Johnson's staff?
They run the same thing.
Yeah.
He was at Georgia Tech with Paul Johnson. Yeah. I don't remember if he was at Georgia Southern with Paul Johnson or not, but may have been.
Yeah, but I think that's a name that makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I think this is a program that has shown ever since it made the move up from FCS to the FBS level, it can compete in the Sun Belt. It's just it hasn't been able to do it the last few years.
I mean, look, I'm not going to begrudge him for firing the guy, right? Like he was not trending to have a good year. He had some up and down success there, just not anything special. But I do think that Georgia Southern is a program. Look, I love that they're passionate about it. That's why people listen to us, right? They believe in their team, sometimes unrealistically so. But the move up, just ask TCU, ask Utah, ask all those teams about it. Like you're probably not going to be the top dog in your league like you used to be when you were in a lesser conference or a lesser league. And have they won the Sun Belt yet?
No, they won 10 games in 2018. That was the first year that Lunsford was the full-time head coach after he took over for Summers in the middle of 2017. And, that was only a couple years ago. They been to bowl games, but their record, as you mentioned, has been going. It's like 6-2, 5-3, 4-4 in Sun Belt play. It's been trending in the wrong direction.
And they were third in the East that year. Their 10-win year, So like they had South Carolina State, UMass on the schedule as well. New Mexico State. Look, good for them. If they can do better, awesome. And I think they probably can do better. How much better, still to be determined.
If I'm a player on that team, I don't know. I'm kind of like, all right. And I think this is what you're seeing happen at USC to some extent. You throw in the towel on the coach after 4 games. What kind of message are you sending? I'm not a fan of early season dismissals, and, we talked a lot about Clay Helton. It was the opportunity. Maybe they were just waiting for that glaring opportunity because they wanted to make it and didn't want to let him salvage a 9-3 season. So let's do it now. I'm not too dialed in on the inner workings of Georgia Southern's state of their head coach. I just don't like the message it sends now. Are you really in a position where you had to get out in front of the coaching search because it's that competitive? I don't know. It's the business side of the sport that I don't love. I don't think this does any good for your program to do it this early, but hey, I think a lot of this probably has to do with the fact that the Sun Belt is viewed as a really strong conference. And we've seen some teams get really national recognition in the last few years for having a ton of success on the big stage. And Georgia Southern sitting there thinking, why aren't we getting some of that attention? Well, you have to be good. And they think the best move they can make is to fire the head coach because they've seen the top side. It was in his year 1, and then it's kind of regressed. So they want to start churning. And that churn, man, it's from a Florida State guy. That churn can be dangerous. You keep churning through coaches. That's exactly all you're doing is churning through coaches.
Yeah, I do have to say, they obviously think things are trending in the wrong direction, but I do side with you guys on what you're saying there in that I know they're 1-3 to start the season, but this is also a team that has gone to bowl games each of the last 3 seasons under Lunsford. It's not like it's been a disastrous start. Maybe you haven't won as much as you would like to in that 10-win season in that first full year. Maybe that set the expectation too high. But I also think that if you look at the way they've played this year, their lone win was a 5-point win against Gardner-Webb, which granted, not exactly what you're going to feel great about. But their losses, they got crushed by Florida Atlantic on the road. They got killed by an Arkansas team that's now in the top 10, and they lost to a Louisiana team that we were all projecting to be the best team in the conference. So I don't know. They should probably be 2-2 at best at this point. So the fact that you're 1-3 instead of 2-2, I don't know if there's other stuff going on that we don't know about or whatever, but I do feel like it is somewhat early to pull the trigger. But at the same time, if you feel a certain way, I'd rather my AD wasn't hesitant and just pulled the trigger if they thought they were going to make that move anyway.
Yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead, bud. Well, my thought is there's a similarity to Clay Helton here, right? Where if you want to fire the guy, do it now because there's a chance he actually could finish okay down this slate. Right. He finishes Arkansas State. Troy just lost to Louisiana Monroe. Georgia State, has looked very up and down. Coastal, Texas State. There's a chance he could win 4 or 5 games, and that may not be enough to to fire the guy. So if you want to get him out now while he doesn't have a chance to redeem himself.
The athletic director showed up in the beginning of 2020, was handed leading the athletic department through a pandemic. And now I guess is finally starting to get some footing there. I look and you mentioned, Bud, about the expectations of this program and trying to figure out, where you sit. And that's where I would have to understand that there is such a unique community there and the way that Statesboro rallies behind this football program. They're going to have some demands for what kind of football they want to see. Brian Van Gorder's memory, that has got some people shook. I know that was 15 years ago, but when you try to stray away from the path, stray away from the plan, that's why throw out any number of the old Georgia Tech, Navy, Georgia Southern option style offensive coaches. I think any of them would be an interesting fit. We mentioned Ivan Jasper, who was fired by Navy's athletic director, but brought back by Ken Niumatalolo in another position. Well, if you want to talk about a nice landing spot, how about if Ivan Jasper could go from on the outs with your AD to being Georgia Southern's head coach? He was an assistant for Paul Johnson before getting to Navy in the late 90s. So, yep, candidates, you better know the community, you better have some connections, and you better play the kind of football that those fans want to see, and you want to win. And I saw somebody mention this, but they were definitely missing Shai Wertz this year. That guy did a lot to be able to help Georgia Southern in that offense click. In terms of injury-related headlines, boy, there's a laundry list. But I know that you put out an all call on Twitter, and it's always part of your process on Sunday as you're trying to go through and get your numbers straight for Bud's bets. The one that I thought we should just get right off the top, and we'll talk Clemson more here in just a little bit, but Brian Brzee is going to be out for the year after a torn ACL. The Clemson defensive tackle, it left the game in the third quarter, and his absence, I mean, that was one of the ways that NC State beat Clemson was by using its offensive line and being able to control that game by running the football. So Brian Brzee's absence absolutely impacted all the way through the fourth quarter and both of the overtimes. James Skalski was knocked out of that game in the first quarter. So we've got Brzee is going to be out for the rest of the year. Star running back Will Shipley, in a twist of good news for Clemson when everything seems to be going bad, his injury on his knee is only going to keep him out about 3 or 4 weeks. It is not going to be something that requires surgery or shuts him down. So with Brzee as the headliner, what do we make of these Clemson injuries? And do you think that this depth is ready to be able to really be tested in places like defensive line, where we said, well, hey, if there's an injury, which is what we said after Tyler Davis, then they'll be cool. I mean, do you think Clemson will be cool? Is it all fine for the Clemson injury report?
I mean, if you're asking whether they're going to get back to playing like they normally get back to playing, I don't think so. If you're asking me whether they think they're going to have another drop off, like another new low, I don't really think so there either. Right? I think this team, can find a way to maybe win 8-9 games. They already have 2 losses. They're still the betting favorite to actually win the ACC as of this morning, which is kind of speaks to what the ACC is at this moment. But those are big losses because Tyler Davis, as you mentioned, is also out. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we really liked this Clemson team, is because of how dynamic they were up on the defensive front. And now you have 2 of the best players in the conference who are going to be out for an extended period of time. So, yeah, it certainly hurts. They have BC this weekend. BC passing game-wise, BC run game-wise, running the ball better this year than they did last year. So we'll have to see if the Eagles can do something to them there.
I mean, yeah, this is you mentioned it, Chip. We talked about it with the Tyler Davis injury. Like I said, if you're gonna suffer an injury on your defense and you're Clemson, that's the one place you want it to be. But now that losing Brzee on top of Davis still being hurt, this is a Clemson team with a lot of problems. And while I think that defensively they're probably still going to be good, if not great, when your offense is struggling the way that their offense has struggled this season, and I'm not sure that there's an easy answer to what the problems are on offense with that offensive line, like the margin for error gets thinner and thinner. So when you lose Brzee for the year, that takes away less margin for error. You're losing, the running Shipley for at least a month. That's going to hurt the offense. This is a team that they're in trouble. Like it's not like 6-6, 5-7 trouble, but this is a team that I can see losing 2 to 3 more games if things keep going the way they are, and this offense keeps playing as poorly as it has. Like this could be a very much not a permanent step back season, but it could be like an 8-4 kind of year for Clemson, where when you look at the way that the standards that they've had since in the college football playoff era and before that building up to it, that's a terrible season. And I think that right now that's very much in the realm of possibility.
Obviously the injuries are going to hurt. I don't know if it hurts as much as their feelings right now. And that to me is what I'm watching for Clemson. This will be Dabo's big. They have not been in this position 6 or 7 years. So you have an entire class.
11. Like this is like 2010 is the last time that Dabo has looked out on the field and said, "Oh crap, we're in trouble."
So you've had so no one on this roster has dealt with this type of adversity. No one on this roster has had to say, well, let's give it our all because we want to make some bowl. It's not the playoff. And that is a different dynamic. And we've seen different programs across the country struggle in this position. When your expectation is championship or bust, what happens when it goes bust this early in the season? I think it's a healthy culture. I really do. I think Dabo preaches family, all in. I love it. I love what he preaches. It's going to get tested this year. How invested is this team? And hey, the team before me, and we just got to go to work and keep putting forth our best effort. It'll look good. I think it'll look good on the field, but practice? Do they have the same motivation? Do they have that same hunger, that same desire to get a 10-win season? Like, is that enough to get them really motivated? I don't know. It's not the demise of Clemson or anything like that. I think it's just going to be a really unique challenge for Dabo to get after his players and, to make sure they're still as invested as they have been every other year, because every other year you've been able to, well, it's only one loss, we can still get back in the playoff, and they've done it. They've won the ACC. They've still been able to accomplish all their goals. I talk about that a lot is, if you're the coach, you can go back into that room and you say, we can still accomplish all our goals. What happens when you can't? Like, can you still sell the playoff as a 2-loss team?
No.
So are they going to be as motivated to say, well, let's win our division or win an ACC when everybody's crapping on the ACC? Like, what does that mean? Like, it's going to be a challenge for Dabo.
First of all, I had this slotted for later, but we'll stick with Clemson here because I think the conversation's good and there's no reason for us to stop it and then come back to it. The reason why Clemson is still a betting favorite is because are you trusting, and I say this with love, are you trusting NC State with a 1-game lead in the division over 8 weeks? Like that's because 1 game is good. They've got the head-to-head, and that is massive. And when you look at the ACC, for the most part, you're looking at NC State, Clemson, and obviously Wake Forest and Boston College, where I think Wake Forest and Boston College probably need more losses. Like they needed to be 6-2 to be able to, and have the right head-to-heads to be able to win it. And then on the coastal side, I think you're looking at Miami, Pittsburgh, and Virginia Tech. Yeah, because North Carolina's got 2, not just conference losses, but 2 division losses. Like North Carolina is one of the only teams out of this whole ACC group that is out of the conference championship race. Clemson needs 2 NC State losses and to run the table the rest of the way, which is why I think the gambling is still favoring Clemson to be able to do that, but it's in NC State's hands. And then Wake Forest and Boston College obviously need to get in and cause all kinds of havoc. But Clemson is selling, we're going to win the ACC. This is what we do. We've got 6 straight conference championships, and I think that's the big message for Clemson.
So important to note as well that NC State also lost a starting defensive tackle, I believe, for the year. They announced that, pregame. So there are guys going down on both sides of this coastal race, and we'll see. I mean, Wake Forest lost a couple guys in the preseason, right? They lost Donovan Green and they lost their starting right tackle, I believe.
Your boy Corey Durden stepped up. He played really well, and I guess he's the new nose guard. Now after that injury. He's got some ability, man. I saw he deleted his Twitter. That's probably a really, really good sign for him there. Focus. Danny knows what I'm talking about. But ultimately, I think with Clemson's defense, it's still hard to score on them, right? Clemson, if you want to talk about why they're still ranked. Yeah, like, should they be ranked? That's the question, because they got all the way down to number 25 in the AP poll. They are higher in the coaches poll. Coaches poll have a better opinion of the Clemson Tigers. And yeah, Roy's question was my biggest, my AP poll rankings takeaway. Number 1, should Clemson be ranked? I do not have an AP poll ballot. I will say that on my CBS Sports 130 ballot, they are in the top 25. I probably lean a little bit more on the forward-looking than resume-based rankings. I know the DK top 8 is all resume.
Yes.
I'm a little bit more on the predictive power rating influence, of which Clemson is still a top 15 team for me.
Why?
Who do you have Clemson ahead of on your ballot?
I will tell you right now.
Well, Chip looks. I think Clemson, if you look at just their performance, easily has played like a top 25 team. First of all, I think NC State's a top 25 caliber team. I think they were kind of unlucky to lose at Mississippi State. And nobody has come close to playing with Georgia at all. And Clemson held Georgia's offense without a score. The only touchdown scored in that game. Georgia may be the best team in the country so far this year. And Clemson, but what? But if you're evaluating quality of play as opposed to just the end result.
But I think we're valuing that Georgia game way too much. I get Georgia's been blowing out people. But, I mean, no offense to Barton, R.I.P. Barton, but it was against Vanderbilt in South Carolina. needed a last-second field goal to beat East Carolina. Like, these aren't – and that was my whole thing. We'll find out a lot more about Georgia this weekend. But at some point, you've got to penalize teams for losing. Like, you can't get points for looking close against Clemson or against Georgia in week 1. Like, they should not. It's easy. This is the same thing that bothers me. I'm just glad now it's happened to an ACC team because I always get accused of being an ACC homer. We get way too much credit for our perception of teams before the season starts. And then when they don't perform, it's like, well, maybe they're still pretty good and they still have all this 4- and 5-star talent. They aren't playing like it, so they don't deserve to be in the top 25 right now.
Yeah, Clemson ranks.
There are 25 teams who can play Georgia within a single score.
No. Do I think there are 10 teams? Do I think there are 25 teams that could beat the way Clemson's playing right now? Yeah.
Really? You would get 25 teams you would favor over Clemson.
Not favor, but that can beat them. Yeah. And you have to balance out. It's again, this isn't just like Vegas power rating style. No, I have them in the top 25 in my gambling perspective. But as far as like an AP poll or where they should be ranked based on what they're doing this season, hell no, they're not a top 25 team. They're dead last in the ACC in points per game, yards per game, and yards per play. And you can bring up the Georgia game and say, yeah, well, that's obviously skewing the numbers. It does. But this is still a team that averaged 4.3 yards per play while scoring 14 points against Georgia Tech. It was held to 4.37 yards per play against NC State the other night and lost in double overtime, only scored 20 points to get there. They've gone out. I tweeted this stat last night. Let me check. They've gone 3 and out on 41.7% of their offensive possessions.
Wow.
That's 115th nationally and last in the ACC. The next worst team, Florida State, and they're 6.5% worse than Florida State. They've been terrible. They are not a top 25 team.
Do you think Iowa's a top 25 team?
Yes,
Iowa's
it's
really
undefeated.
good defense. Clemson a really good defense.
And it's won.
Clemson's
Clemson's
really
lost twice.
Offenses.
It's lost twice. It's beaten South Carolina State and Georgia Tech by 6. Woo!
Fair.
Go Clemson.
That's fair. But Iowa hasn't played Georgia, and they haven't played NC State. I mean, they played Iowa State team. I think NC State's better than. But
no, but that's. I mean,
Clemson
was 4-0. Clemson
is
it wins half the time. Top 25 teams win more than half the time.
That's fair.
top 10 defense nationally. If you can, those are awful offensive statistics, but they are an elite defensive team. And I think
they just lost an elite defensive player.
I think
too.
I just think elite being like a misplaced team is like still maybe a top 25 team. Okay, you ready for the list?
Yeah, I need to hear this.
Okay,
so I can yell at you.
All right, the teams that are ahead of Clemson.
No, I want to know who you have them ahead of.
Michigan State, Texas A&M, Fresno State, Coastal Carolina, UCLA, LSU, Texas, Auburn, NC State, Baylor.
You have them ahead of NC State?
Yeah, I don't do
NC State literally just beat it.
I mean,
what are you doing here, buddy?
That's college football in a nutshell right there. Yeah. How you doing?
Hey, losses don't matter. I thought they were better before the game.
Yeah. They still have more talent on their roster, so we should give them credit for that.
That's terrible, Chip. I expect better of you.
Baylor, Iowa State, BYU, Wake Forest, UTSA, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Washington.
So where do you have them?
Silverstein had a field day with this, didn't he?
Huh? With mine?
You got some Slack messages about this, didn't you? Or did you not see it?
I mean, it was turned into him. I don't know if you saw it or not.
Where do you have them, though? Like what number?
14.
14?
You're the coach's poll. Who are you voting for out there? You mailing in some coach's poll ranking?
I still think they are one of the a top 15 team.
Man, dude.
So I don't understand that at all. You can't base it on
I can base it on whatever I want. That's my ballot.
You think they would beat, and that's what drives me nuts. That's why I do mine resume based, because that's the only way you can do it.
Where did you have them ranked before the NC State loss?
9-ish, somewhere around there.
So losing to NC State and falling to 2-2 is worth only a 5-point drop in your rankings.
When I'm sorting my teams out, I don't have any numbers at the beginning. I just write all the team names out and just start moving them around each other. And then I come in at the very end and put the numbers. Well, and sometimes that leads to some surprises.
In my opinion ballot for the Super 16 poll, I did not even consider Clemson for my top 16. I don't know where I would put them. They sure as hell wouldn't be in the top 25.
Well, you just wrote a feature about how bad the offense is on CBS.
It sucks.
You can go check out.
And guess what? I don't know if you know this or not, but offense is kind of an important part of football. Like, defenses aren't winning championships anymore. Offenses are.
I'm not asking my number 14 team in the country to go compete for a playoff spot or win a national championship. I'm asking you to go like 9-3, 10-2.
Are you certain they're not going 10-2? I'll tell you that right now.
And all of that is still on the table for the Clemson Tigers.
I know 2 of them were in overtime, but they did give up 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions to our guy Devin Leary. Like, when they needed to be great, they weren't.
I know. The ballots turned in. Like, you can make all the arguments as you want.
You are skewing our CBS Sports 130 poll, sir. My name is attached to that. You are dragging my reputation through the mud.
My name is attached to that. And by the way, Clemson came in at number 29 on the consensus. So clearly my number 14 is not skewing it too much if Clemson's at number 29 when all of the ballots are collected. And I don't yell at AP voters too much because I practice what I preach in that it's your ballot. You can choose how you want to do it. Like, if you want to go only resume based or only predictive metrics, power ratings, and who would be favored, I'm fine with all of that.
Do you want to know why they're 29th?
Does you have them 58th?
Because I turn in my ballot of all 130 teams using my rating system that is not predictive. It ranks teams based on nothing but how they've played this year. It takes no preseason expectations into account, nothing. Just what have you done and who have you done it against? Clemson's number 70 on my ballot. That's the team you have at number 14.
Yeah.
Because, hey, they were in the playoff last year and the year before.
All I know is I don't know if you guys hit this on the reaction pod, because I don't know if you were able to see it in time. If this NC State upset gives us a new look at Dave Dorn behind the scenes, and all of a sudden he's the cigar smoking, solo cup drinking guy that's going to start showing some personality, give me all of that, Dave Dorn, because we haven't seen that in his entire tenure as the head coach of the Wolfpack. So I'm here for it.
Did we find out what was in the solo cup?
Not technically. I don't know. Some reporter had to have asked, right?
I mean, I want to know what was in there.
Yeah, me too.
I can guess because the video was at the football facility, and so it was probably a bottle that was in a desk, right? I mean, I'm just using some.
He was
common
outside
sense
though,
here.
because he had the cigar. There could have been a tailgate around. You know.
No. I think that came from
the office.
Yeah, I think they stepped out because you don't really go party with fans with that one. I mean, that's one of you and the staff, right?
Yeah.
And the solo cups get passed around, and everybody gets a little pour. He made sure to get out in front of that awesome fountain that has all those stone wolves on it. They're all climbing the rocks. But I'm gonna guess that came from a bottle that was in a desk that is held only for special occasions, and beating Clemson at home certainly is one of those special occasions. I'm glad I got Tom all hot and bothered saying that Clemson preposterous things like
I'm
Clemson
shocked.
might be one of the 15th best
Me
teams
too.
in the country.
I'm shocked that you have them that high. I thought, whatever. No, it's
I thought that would be me, because all I really do is the power ratings. Like, I don't, like the resume wise, that is interesting. But as someone who is on the midnight edition of the Saturday Night Reaction, do we really want to be asking what's in a red solo cup? Like that, some things are just assume it is whatever you want it to be, right?
Well, Barton was pretty forthcoming with his drink of choice late night, right?
Oatmeal vodka.
Yeah.
Oatmeal vodka, oat milk.
Oatmeal vodka, yeah.
Oatmeal vodka. Jesus, I'm about to throw up.
But Barton wasn't on video.
That's true.
Hey, I felt like
you would hear that glass clinking though.
Okay. Any other notes on Clemson? I got only one other real poll reaction, and then we can hit the break and do a punt for the review.
If Clemson finishes 9-3, you could put it in your top 15. Until then, no.
All right. So right now the big disparity right now, but in the coaches poll and the AP poll, in addition to the Clemson Tigers, it is, what do you think about Oklahoma? Because Iowa is locked in at number 5. I think Iowa's going to be number 5 for the rest of the year, including being number 5 in the final college football playoff rankings, being the first team left out. But the AP has Penn State at number 4, Oklahoma at number 6. Coaches poll has Oklahoma at number 4, Penn State at number 6. So what kind of guy are y'all? Are you a Penn State or are you an Oklahoma?
Based on what you've seen on the field, I got Penn State ahead of Oklahoma. It's not even close.
Yeah.
I'm just mad at the Oklahoma fans who are chanting, "We want Caleb," because I thought it was going to happen. And now Lincoln Riley's be like, well, you guys can't tell me how to coach. He's not going to make that switch now. I'm still waiting for that. I was wrong on that one. I thought that Oklahoma was going to kick into gear, the offense. But yeah, from what we've seen now on the field, I think it's Penn State, and it has to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm convinced that both of them are going to lose a game at some point. But I think that right now, based on what we've seen, you kind of have to give Penn State the edge simply because of the resume of who they've beaten and how, even though that Wisconsin win doesn't really look nearly as fun anymore. But I just think that Oklahoma, it's undefeated and it's playing teams it should be beating by more, too close. Penn State's won 2 marquee games. I feel like if I'm projecting how their seasons are going to go, I think Oklahoma's going to finish ahead of Penn State. But right now, based on what we've seen, I have to have Penn State ahead of Oklahoma.
I think it's just really close, right? I mean, is Auburn demonstrably better than West Virginia has been? Probably not. Like, I think West Virginia so far has a better win than anything Auburn has, in beating Virginia Tech. They played Maryland pretty close. Maryland, this far is undefeated. Penn State, single score win over Auburn, right? Oklahoma, single score win over West Virginia. Penn State, road win against Wisconsin. Wisconsin so far looked pretty incompetent on offense and it's just not looked great. Oklahoma, more impressive win, I guess, over Nebraska with some flukiness in there. It made it a little closer. I think Penn State has been a better team to this point. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate that it's not entirely clear to me that Oklahoma is worlds behind Penn State right now. I think Oklahoma has a really good defense.
Yeah, I think for me, like, the bigger thing is that Iowa's at number 5, but we've harped on that enough. I just don't understand. I understand it. I just don't think it's right.
Because of points off turnovers?
Because of that and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, if you're ranking the undefeated teams, is Iowa better than Penn State, Notre Dame, Cincinnati, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Michigan State? Like, are you 100% convinced that they're better than those teams because they beat an Indiana team that has looked pretty shaky all season long, and then they beat an Iowa State team that just lost to Baylor and is now 2-2? I feel like Iowa's resume gets flimsier every single week, yet because it's not losing, it's going to stay at number 5.
That drives me nuts too. I think you've got to be flexible with what wins stay good wins and which ones get weaker and weaker over time. And Iowa's resume has gotten weaker and weaker with every passing week, including a not so great game against Colorado State. So I'm with you. Like, it's this season, I think, is going to drive me nuts because we're going to hear a lot of coaches say, well, we had, we beat this top 10 team and we beat this top 10 team. We had 3 wins against top. Let's see how those wins are stacking up at the end of the season. And it can work both ways. Like, Arkansas's win over Texas starting to look a little bit better now after what Texas did to Texas Tech. Like, it can work both ways, but man, I think it's going to be frustrating this year and this is great. Like, I love it. It's great for us, but I think it's going to be incredibly frustrating to hear coaches are going to get into the politics game. They're going to start promoting their teams and their wins because it's going to be close, I think.
I also like to go with what you were saying about reevaluating things. I think especially early in the season, you have to do that. Like, if you beat a team that's ranked number 7 in late October, they're like 7-0 or 6-1 or something, and then that team fades down the second half, I think you can hold that win in higher esteem because they were clearly playing well at that point and you beat them and they've been bad since. But like early in the year, when you beat a team that's ranked 15th, that is 1-0, and then that team is now 2-2, I feel like that number 15 should be completely forgotten about when you beat them. So it's kind of a weird balancing act.
And don't forget that Iowa State win is one of the biggest things Iowa has going for it, at least in terms of where it is in the rankings. Coming up on the other side, it's our favorite time to put a close on the weekend that was. For those of us who were here for the Instant Reaction Pod, any final notes, which includes, we record while there's still action going on, and goodness gracious, That's where I'll be going for upon further review in one of the Pac-12 games that finished afterwards. But if there's anything else we want to come back to with more time to digest, look at notes, break down some games, we hit it next on upon further review. Next. All right, Bud, you did say that you had a good upon further review locked and loaded. So I'll let you jump into it first before we start passing it around.
Oh man, did you all see the punt that Western Kentucky had?
No.
I want to set the stage for this. This is pretty inexcusable. Western Kentucky, would we say they have a better defense or a better offense?
It's always the offense.
Yeah, I would agree. They're playing Indiana. Haven't had a whole lot of stops on the day. So they end up losing this game 33-31. But let's go back to the fourth quarter. Have you seen this? This is so bad. All right, so fourth quarter, chance to win the game, right? 4th and 1 on the Indiana 48. What's the call here? You got to go for this. You have an offense. They punt on 4th and 1 with that offense and that defense. Like, the only chance you have to win the game is to roll the dice. Well, actually, I guess punting there technically is the true roll of the dice. If you look at the odds, like, you are gambling that your defense is going to get a stop, which is not a good bet. The safer thing to do is to go for it there. But wow, that was bad. Guess what happened?
It was incredibly disrespectful to Michael Penix. It was Western Kentucky saying, we don't think your Indiana offense is going to get first downs to ice this game.
And then Michael Penix went ahead and drove 86 yards in short order for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Indiana won by what, 2?
2.
That seems important. Yeah.
Terrible. I mean, what are you doing, Clay Helton?
Tyson Hilton.
Sorry. Okay. Both the Heltons are on target. Both the Heltons are on the they're on the list now.
Well, speaking of, that's where I wanted to turn my attention, because a game that ended after we were done with recording the reaction show was Oregon State's, I don't know, butt whooping of USC. Like,
beat down.
Lined up and beat them.
Our Beavers, yeah. Our
beloved Beavs made USC look bad. And the joke on Twitter was, can you fire a coach twice? Or, like, can we, like, unplug it, plug it back in? All the like, what's wrong with USC? So, and I hate that we've gone totally pessimistic, negative with a lot of this show. What's the floor for this USC team? Because we have another team that, like Clemson, has a lot of talent. You look at the roster and you can identify blue chip players who will be in the NFL. Yet all of these human beings get together and try to do the same thing when the ball goes hike, and it doesn't work, at least not successfully enough to come anywhere close to the expectations. What is the floor for this USC team the rest of the way?
It might be this weekend when they go and play Colorado on the road and they're still a 7-point favorite. Colorado is really having trouble scoring the ball right now. Like, really just cannot move the ball. They 17 passes for 67 yards right now. Not great. They ran the ball okay. I think Darren Chiaverini is a good coordinator. Remember, Colorado's quarterback got hurt in the preseason, and we're finally starting to see it now. Darren might be out of tricks here. This may just be what Colorado's passing offense is, unfortunately. Can we also speak about one more UFR thing before we dump back into USC? Did you guys watch the end of this Colorado thing? So it's 35-10. 3rd and 2 from the Arizona State 12. Colorado rushes for a loss of 3. If you're down 25 points, what do you think you should do? Should you go for it? Or should you kick the field goal to make the game go from under to over? Like, did some important guy from Colorado have the over that they needed? They kicked the field goal to go down 35-13. Like, anytime I could take a 25-point game and make it a 22-point game, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So
just wanted to end on a good note, feeling good about themselves, putting points on the board.
Yeah,
I found that hilarious.
I put myself in the shoes of Carl Dorella, and I just think it's good to get these live reps for my field goal unit. Do you know how few times our field goal unit and other red zone and special team situations are going to get out there? Might as well give them a go.
I have 2 upon further reviews.
Okay.
One is something we didn't mention on Saturday night's show. We never got around to it, thankfully. Last week, Illinois, 4th and 1, the Maryland 41-yard line, up a score. decides to punt. Maryland drives right down the field, goes 94 yards, scores a touchdown to tie the game, wins it. Saturday, on the road against Purdue, Illinois is up 3 on Purdue in a 9-6 just slobber knocker. 4th and 2, and I think it was the Purdue 35 or 36. I can't remember. They've got a running back who is averaging over 6 yards per carry, and Purdue has shown absolutely no desire to want to tackle. Illinois punts. Purdue drives right down the field, scores a touchdown. It's 2 weeks in a row Illinois has decided to punt on 4th and short in opponent territory, and it's caused them a game. And number 2 is we've talked about Nebraska's special teams on Saturday night. So I was looking up the stats today just to drive the point further home. Worst special teams EPA in the nation, for all 130 teams. EPA, for those you don't know, it's a nerd stat called expected points added, which is basically,
I know who this is.
Which is basically how many points are you adding per play. Nebraska is far and away the worst in the nation through week 4. They are at negative 37.92. The next worst is Tulsa at negative 29.67. So yes, Nebraska fans.
That's like a full standard deviation above the second worst team in the country.
Exactly.
That's hard to do.
Your special teams are just as bad as you think they are.
Now, is that accumulative? Does EPA accumulate such that that negative 37 means that 5 touchdowns have potentially been lost because of poor special teams play over the course of 4 games?
Yeah, I mean, there's more context that you have to add to it than that balances out in other areas. But yes, just purely special teams plays, they've cost themselves over 5 touchdowns.
Tom, you'll be happy to know, I have not adjusted this for garbage time, so take it for what it's worth. Illinois is 128th in decision EPA. So making the correct decision. It's like if you take them to the blackjack table and they're hitting on 19 routinely, just real dumbassery there. But I do have a conspiracy theory, if you want to hear it, on why Bielema is botching the situation so much. You know how he was getting sued by Arkansas, or he was suing Arkansas, and they were suing him back for the buyout, and they were claiming he was like working for the Patriots. And he's like, "No, I'm just kind of interning." Maybe like Bill Belichick's smart about this. He doesn't mess this up. Maybe this is a long con by Brett Bielema to be like, "Look, I wasn't even in the building, right? I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't really working there. Look at these terrible decisions I made. Clearly, if I was actually working for Belichick and picked up something, I would not be doing this dumb stuff." Like maybe this is just a long con for him to get that full buyout from Arkansas.
I think that could be it. I also think it's far more likely that you look at the time he was away from college. The one thing that changed the most in college football since Bielema was at Arkansas to when he came back was when he was still at Arkansas, you could trust your defense to win you a game. You can't do that anymore.
You don't think it's a long con for like good year-over-year numbers? Like if I make the wrong decision every single time, then I am guaranteed to have an increase in wins in year 2, and people will think that this program's on the right trajectory.
These are all stellar theories.
I got an upon further review for you.
All right.
From an instant review, video replay. I have a new favorite coach in college football, Shawn Elliott, head coach at Georgia State, who's up beating Auburn. Do you guys see his comments after the game? Because the SEC has a rule, right? Like they don't out each other. You don't badmouth anything about the conference. Well, when you're not in the conference, you can let it rip and just shoot from the hip, which is what Shawn Elliott said after the game. Controversial late call, Auburn. Did you guys see the replay, by the way? I thought it was pretty clear cut and dry. The ball hit the ground, helped him. But his quote, Shawn Elliott, they had a little bit of help on that review where the ball was incomplete. It should have been put back in the 30-yard line. But when you play in the SEC, you have to take the hits. And they gave us a real gut punch on that call. New favorite coach right there.
So I did see the play, and it was a bad call. It should have been an incomplete pass.
Yes.
However, that was one play of 13 on this drive.
It drove the length.
98 yards across down the field. So one 19-yard gain, yes, it probably was a gut punch. Yeah. But for the other of the 98 yards that were chewed up in this game, I think that it made it feel a little bit less of a, like this one call, because it wasn't the touchdown. It was on a 1st and 10. It wasn't even a 3rd down. It was just a play in a 98-yard drive. But I'm with you. I like to see Shawn Elliott shooting off a little bit. It was a great effort by Georgia State, and you probably want to show your team that, right? Like you just want to go and throw some haymakers because your defense did everything possible to be able to put you in the position to win that game, but they just were not going to be able to nurse a 24-12 lead on the road against an SEC opponent forever.
I know if I was one of his players, I'd want him taking haymakers at the officials than me in pregame warmups, because that's what he's out there doing as a quarterback. I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't need a slap upside the head. I'm good.
I will say, like, all we can ever ask for our officials in any sport is that they be consistent. And at least between the kick return in the Mississippi State game last week, the punt on 3rd down in the Penn State Auburn game, and then that play in the Auburn, at least they are consistently terrible. So, you know what to expect.
Tom, you mentioned that punt in the 4th quarter. You didn't mention the punt in the 1st quarter on 4th and 2 with 9 minutes left in the in the 1st quarter. 4th and 2 from the Purdue 49. Illinois punted there too. Like, how many possessions can you piss away? That's crazy.
Year over year, we're just trying to make it look like we're better in year 2.
I mean,
already planning.
Also, I have a rule proposal. If we have to go to replay, the call on the field doesn't matter, right? It's bang bang. If it's unclear enough that we have to go to replay, let's use the video. Let's use the independent ref, and let's have him make the best possible judgment. I think this deference to the call on the field is stupid. If it's so unclear that we have to go to replay anyway, the call on the field can't be that good, right?
But what do you do if you can't tell? Like, and that happens all the time. Like, the official, they can't overturn it. They don't know what to do either. Then what do you do?
I think it's a fair question. I think you have to use your best judgment, right? I mean, there's nothing that says you can't be talking to the guy on the field. Which I think is
why they say if it's not clear cut, they're just going to go with the ruling on the field. I totally hear what you're saying. I just don't know if there is a solution, because a lot of times we're watching and it goes to review and you're like, I can't tell what way it was.
There is a solution. Just get rid of review.
Yeah, I would lean towards Tom, and I think every player would too. Players don't want it. Bad calls are a part of the game.
If you limited it to like scoring plays or like the final 2 minutes of a half or something, I think we'd all be much happier. Any
other final notes from week 4 before we shut the book and spin it forward?
Just start TJ Finley already. Don't play games all week, Brian Harsin. Just make the move. I know it's hard. It's your favorite son. It's Auburn's own.
You wouldn't have the medical staff evaluate him throughout the week to see how he's going to do.
Because he got benched though. It wasn't.
Well, he got hit and then he got benched.
Yeah, I don't need to see anymore.
But I mean, was Finley even all that good in relief?
No, but
so that's the thing. I bet you, like, if you're Brian Harsin and you had to make that move, it's like, yeah, you came back to win, but man, it would have been nice if Finley had just been like 12 for 16 for like 120 yards in that touchdown instead of 9 for 16 and averaging only 6.1 yards per attempt. Because it's like, you would just, like, at that point, it's like, well, how can we not go with him? He played too well, but it's like he was so mediocre that it's like, oh God, I don't know.
How much will the quarterback matter against LSU? Because LSU's run defense, as we discussed all offseason, and got a bunch of blowback from LSU fans. Remember? I was like, it's not good. They're like, no, the pass defense is bad. It's like, I don't know. On a efficiency basis, y'all's run defense was terrible last year. Let's see if it's any better. UCLA ran all over him.
Does Bo Nix get a second chance because all the blame gets put on wide receivers coach Cornelius Williams, who was fired on Friday? Like, if you're the Auburn coaching staff, does making this change mean that you've got to shake up whatever responsibilities there are, game day, game week, or otherwise, and then give it a go with the new leadership structure?
I don't know what happened there, so I don't want to put my foot in my mouth and comment on something. It's a little bit weird to fire somebody after that amount of time. I know that our Auburn 24/7 guys reported it was for football-related reasons, so like not any kind of like off-field.
I saw 60 minutes of football-related reasons on Saturday.
Sure.
At least for some kind of changes.
When's the last time Auburn had good receivers?
Fair.
Like, if Texas A&M fired its receivers coach tomorrow, nobody would be like, oh, what a terrible move. Like, they've had bad receiver play for Jimbo's entire time there, right? That may just be the offense. But, like, sometimes it makes sense. Now, he did promote a guy who came with him from Boise. So maybe he wanted to get.
He's a former offensive coach. Like, it might have been a little bit more of we're not all on the same page, and it's starting to really impact the way that things are happening on the field. That was my bet, but I don't know. It's my bet. I mean, I can hear football reasons and look at Auburn's offense and feel as though I have enough football reasons. I don't even need to assume that there was anything weird or nefarious or, going on behind the scenes. There may be, but I feel confident that I've seen enough for Brian Harsin to make a change. And I've got it's fitting that he's at Auburn because I've got Brian Harsin as a head coach in the SEC that will not bend to the normal curve of expectations when it comes to decision making and sort of the way you handle business. So if he does something we're not used to, like fire a wide receivers coach just because you don't like the way things are going, maybe that's Brian Harsin. Who knows? Any other notes?
I want to give a Coach of the Month award to Mel Tucker. Now, should they have lost to Nebraska? Maybe. But I think he's just getting every single little bit out of this team. Did a nice job in the transfer portal, made up for some lost time. They've had pretty good injury luck so far this year, which helps, but he's doing a really good job. Only one negative decision EPA call of the entire year. So, like I said, he's not kind of kneecapping his own team's effort. They're going for it when they should, which is great to see from a defensive-minded head coach. Like, that's what Nick Saban does. If you're a defensive-minded head coach and you want to be successful, you have to give your offense every single chance to be good and say, look, my defense will bail us out if this call doesn't work. So, shout out to Mel Tucker doing a really nice job at Michigan State. Michigan State, let's go to a bowl. Let's cash that over ticket.
All right, let's
Coach of the Month.
Grab a question real quick before we get out of here. I know Arkansas doesn't beat Georgia, but how would it be possible?
It's possible. Defensively, you limit them. You keep the game low, and you make a play. Maybe you score some points on special teams or defense, but I don't think Arkansas is going to beat Georgia either. But like I said the other night, I didn't think Arkansas was beating Texas. I didn't think Arkansas was beating Texas A&M. It won both those games.
I think it's possible. You're going to need the defense to probably score. And I think maybe that's how it happens, right? We are impressed with what Georgia's offense is doing recently. But it's South Carolina, it's Vanderbilt, and it's UAB. And I'm not even convinced UAB tried in that game. Like, UAB may just be playing for its conference season, which some people think is what they do. Maybe Georgia's offense is not quite ready. This is not me saying it is because, I may still bet Georgia at this point. We'll see. But that's mainly because I think Arkansas's offense has some real limitations. Maybe if those offensive linemen are healthy and good to go. KJ Jefferson apparently going to practice this week, so that's encouraging. But it's probably defensive scores for Arkansas. I just have a hard time. How many points do you best case scenario? What does Arkansas score
Against
24?
In
Stanford without a defensive score or short field. That's
24 feels like a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
that's the best case.
Correct. I think that this will be a great test for. I think Georgia wins. I think it'll be a great test for JT Daniels because of the way we've seen Arkansas's defense just kind of throw quarterbacks off their game entirely. That rush 3, drop 8 has beaten a lot of quarterbacks. JT Daniels has a lot more experience than a lot of the quarterbacks that Arkansas has really been able to mess with defensively. But if that passing game, JT Daniels is not finding his windows because of all of that athleticism and the way that they read and fly to the ball, and they're not getting a lot of yak, and it's just trying to dink and dunk and make some contested throws and leaning on the run game as much as possible. This is an awesome test for me for Georgia's offense and where it's at, because if Georgia's offense puts up 30 points on this Arkansas defense, okay, giddy up. All your does Georgia deserve consideration for number 1 debates? I'll take them if Georgia's offense is clicking here. But if Arkansas is going to win this game, it's going to be because Georgia falls short when it has the ball.
Another thing that I think we should point out too, because we spent a lot of time talking about Georgia's defense, looking at True Media's success rate stat. You know what team ranks first in offensive success rate this year?
Georgia.
Yeah.
And that's with that Clemson game baked in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have just destroyed everybody.
It's Georgia and Michigan, right? When a lot of the big time efficiency stats seem to be populating those two near the top.
Michigan's 26. Second right now is actually Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
You know who's fourth? You'll never guess who's fourth, so I'll just tell you. Baylor.
Baylor is we got some negative comments about Baylor in the chat and from Twitter. Look, Baylor has another opportunity this weekend. You know, we'll see. I actually think they have a decent shot to go on the road and beat Oklahoma State. They passed the test against Iowa State, even though like almost all their yards came in their first 3 drives and they didn't do a damn thing the rest of the game. The reason why I'm hesitant to buy in on Baylor a little bit is because that schedule just early on was so bad. Just not a competitive slate that they played.
Why'd we get negative comments? Who was talking bad about Baylor?
We didn't give enough love. We didn't give enough love to Baylor. I was like, good job to Baylor. They were like, you guys are more about just dunking on the fact that you were right about your Iowa State take, which we were. So,
we were. That's true.
Yeah,
I'll cop to it.
We should talk more about that.
I will say Baylor reminds me, like, it's funny because we think of where they were, what kind of team they were under Art Briles offensively, and now under Aranda, they strike me as a team that would just fit right at home in the Big Ten West right now.
Yeah, you think so?
Yes, they would be perfect in the Big Ten West.
Like a Purdue, they kind
They're
of
an Iowa-ish type of team, but with a better offense.
Right.
I think so.
Good stuff. Reminder, if you want to get a question in for the mailbag on Wednesday, you can do so by leaving us a 5-star review. In the review, put your question. We'll add it to the big old bag of mail. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can watch this Upon Further Review Monday show every single Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube, youtube.com/cover3. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Grazie.